All right, so continuing on with this discussion about files, what we've done so far is we have created an instance of a file using the file object. We've given it the path where the file is located, and then it can build the instance from that object. Now, that's not the only option we have available to us. If we go in and say file class in Java, then the file object, as we look at the different methods that we can do with it, we can test to see whether the file can execute, can read, can write. We can delete the file. We can check to see if the file exists. There's lots of different things. So for example, with the exists, I could come in here and say system.out.println and print f.exists, which is one of the methods available to us. And this will either give us a true or a false. And so it prints out a true because the file does exist, right? Another thing that we can do, one of the methods we have down here is the length of the file. So we can get how many characters it is with the length. And this one happens to be 73 characters. Okay. The point I'm trying to make is the file object, the purpose of creating the file object is because there's a lot of things we can do with it. All of these methods that are available to us to help get information about the file and do things to the file. Anyway, that's the file object we're creating, right? So we've created this file object, and now we've attached this scanner and said, let's attach this to the file object so that we can read in from that file. Now what we've done so far is we created a variable called line, and then we read in a line and printed it out, and read in a line and printed it out. Okay, so let's look at this a different way. Let's just read in one word instead of a line. So I'll create a string and I'll create a separate string called word and set that equal to blank as well. And then I'm just going to go and read in one word. Well, how do we do that? Well, we're going to call the scanner just like we did with the in.next, which will only read in one token, it'll read in one to the space, one word, but if there's a period with a word, it'll read in the period too. It just delineates everything or delimits everything by a space. Okay? And so if I say file in.next, I think that's the first time in a while I've used the word delineate or delimit. But anyway. Okay, so I read in a word, and then I can put that into the word variable, and then I'll just go ahead and print out what I read in. Okay, so I'll print out the word that I just read in. Okay, just double check to make sure I'm reading in the right file. And then I read in one word, and it reads in the word this. And that's the word that it's read in. Okay? Now if I do another read, so if I say go and get the next word, so into that word variable goes next. Now this is going to overwrite whatever's in that next variable, and so maybe I'd want to create word to variable or something. But you get the point. Oh, and then I got to print it out. So I'm just going to do kind of the same process we already went through. But this is now going to print out the second word, okay? Because I read in the first word, I printed it out. I read in the second word, and I printed it out. Now this is the thing that I think gets people a little bit confused on file input. And I've got a new pen board that I'm going to attempt to use here and see how it works. No guarantees on how well this is going to go. So what happens is this. We talk about the buffer on something like Java in terms of that pipe. Okay, so we've got the pipe. Let's see if I can get my little arrow to show up here. Okay, so I'm going to draw this pipe like on Mario Brothers. Oh. Okay, pretend this is a perfect drawing. Okay, so there's the pipe coming in. and I've got some text in that pipe that says this. Whoa. Okay, so far not good. Okay, let's try this again. I think I pushed the button while I was writing. Okay, this is a test. You can see that my writing, my actual handwriting, is not that much better than when I was doing it with the mouse. It looks like I'm trying to do it with my mouth. And you won't be surprised to know that my first poor grade I got in school, and there were others to follow, believe me. My first poor grade was in handwriting. I brought my report card home. My mom cried. It was a very sad story. Anyway, so we've got this text that has come in this buffer, we call it. So this pipe acts as the buffer. So when I go in and say read in the next, when I do that, now sorry, this is getting all messed up. I just realized. Let's see if I can get this perfect. Okay. So if I look at my program, I'm doing a next. Okay, and the next reads in the next, whatever it is, out to the token. Okay, so if let's see here. When I do that next, it goes out, grabs this word. That goes out of the buffer, and the cursor is left right here. Okay? So the next thing to come out, I mean, what actually happens, that this disappears out of the buffer, and everything else slides down to the edge of the buffer. That's why we use the pipe, because all of this is going to move to now where the is the front. Okay? So then when I go in and do that second next, then it reads in the next word to the token. It's going to read in the this and there is, and then the cursor goes there, and we keep going through that process as we read in one token at a time. And so that's how this idea of a buffer works, right? This lid is open when we say next and to the next space. If we do a next line, it will read everything in until it finds a carriage return character that takes us down to the next line. And so that's the way that the buffer works. And notice, if I do a couple more of these nexts, so let me just do this. I'll make these kind of a group, and then I'll do two more of them to read in the first line. So I'm just going to copy and paste, even though this is a horrible idea. And what will happen is it says this is some text. I've now done 4 reads. Okay. I've read in this word as well. The cursor went there, and then I did another next that read in that word. And that notice that the text has a period at the end of it. It read the period in as well because it was before the space or before the line return. Now if I go and try and read in, that was the last line of text, right? When I look at my file, that was the last line. What happens if I do another read after that? I'll copy that. And it's going to grab the first word of the next line because that's the next token. That's the next thing that's in the buffer. Okay? Now if I did this one line at a time, it's the same process, right? So let me delete a bunch of these. So if I say set the line equal to file in dot next line, and then I do the same thing. Whoops. Well, let's print it out so we can see what we just read in. Let's print out the line, and then we'll come in and read in the next line. Okay, so we can kind of see what's happening. When I do this, it says go out and get that entire line to the carriage return. So this is some text. It's going to go out and get the entire group of text, and what's sitting behind it is some more text, right? There's out in the buffer here, then this, and then it goes on to the next line that's all in that pipe waiting to be read in. Okay, why am I emphasizing this so much? One of the things that beginning programmers get confused on, in my experience, is the fact that once we've read something in, we can't go back and read it in. It's not like it all just sits out there and we can just scroll back and forth through it. Once we've done a next, it's read out of the buffer, right? It's gone. It's out. So this word is no longer in the buffer because it's out. It's been read out. Or if we read in a line, the entire line is gone from the buffer because it was read out. And so if we want to go back and start over reading the file from the beginning, then we can't. We can't. We have to go back and create a new object, the way that this one is set up at least. We also can't just jump forward and say, let me undo this crossing. We can't also just jump forward and say, hey, I want to go read in the 5th word right there, because there's all this other stuff in the way. We have to go in and read that one at a time because it's all part of this big pipe that apparently curves, that it's all sitting out there waiting to be read in. So if I want to get to this right there, then I have to read in all of this first. And if I want any of this stuff later on, I need to read it into somewhere temporarily to hold it, because once I read it out, it's gone. Okay, have I beat that dead horse enough? I just want to make sure we're really clear on this idea of a buffer and reading in from a buffer. And all of this stuff that I'm talking about also applies to when we're reading in from the console. When we're typing stuff in down here, when we're asking for text and reading it in, all of that same stuff applies because it's a function of the scanner, which is what we use to read in that information, right? It's the way it does it. All the text goes into a buffer, and then we read it in however we want to from that buffer, but it's all going to come in order, and once we've read it in, it's gone. Okay? All right. I feel like I've emphasized that enough. Hopefully I have. So we're just going to do one other little example here of reading in from the input and doing it all without trying to go one line at a time and read it in. So we'll look at that in the next video. Spencer out.